There comes a time in every life when you stand face to face with something, or someone, that looks like love, sounds like a friend, feels like family, but deep in your gut, you know something ain't right, and that's when the war begins. Not on the outside, but inside of you. Between what your heart hopes for, and what your soul knows. That's why today, I'm not here to give you fear. I'm here to give you sight. You see, not every smile is pure. Not every hand you shake is clean. Some people walk into your life with darkness behind their eyes, and the worst part, they wear masks so beautiful, even angels would weep. But listen, evil doesn't always show up screaming. Sometimes, it whispers. Sometimes, it hugs you before it hurts you. It's not always in what they do. It's what they don't say, what they hide, what they drain from you over time. So today, we're going to open your eyes. Because the enemy is not always outside your house. Sometimes it's sitting right next to you. Let's learn how to see, not just look. At first, they walk into your life like a blessing wrapped in skin. They smile at you like they've known you forever. They laugh at your jokes even when they're not funny. They listen. Oh, how they listen. With eyes that make you feel like you're the only voice in the world that matters. And something in you begins to believe that maybe, just maybe, this person is a gift. Maybe this is what real connection feels like. Maybe this is the friend you've prayed for. The partner you needed. The mentor you lacked. That's how it starts. That's how evil wears its prettiest mask. Charm. But see, real charm isn't loud. It's quiet, subtle. It doesn't force itself on you. It gently wraps itself around your needs and becomes the very thing you've been starving for. And when you're hungry for affection, for approval, for safety, you don't check where it's coming from. You just eat. But charm, when wielded by the wrong hands, is not kindness. It's bait. It's a strategy. It's the opening move of a slow and silent game of control. Evil doesn't always come in fury. It comes with flattery. It studies you. It learns you. It watches your wounds and targets the places where you ache the most. And when it finds that soft, tender place, the one nobody else understands, it touches it gently, over and over, until you associate that person with comfort, healing love. You begin to trust them. And that's exactly what they want, because once they have your trust, the shift begins. It's not sudden. It's not loud. But something changes. The compliments grow quieter. The smiles fade. The attention you once felt drowning in suddenly feels like a desert. And you, still desperate to feel seen the way they used to see you, begin chasing the version of them you met at the start. You begin asking yourself questions. Did I do something wrong? Did I change? Was I not enough anymore? And in your mind, you become the problem. You tell yourself, maybe if I just try harder, they'll be warm again. Maybe if I love them louder, they'll return to who they used to be. But they're not interested in being who they were. That version of them never existed. That was the bait. Now that you're hooked, they switch the game. And they don't control you with kindness anymore. Now they control you with guilt. With silence. With withdrawal. They make you feel like every ounce of affection you get from them is something you have to earn, so you hustle for it. You bend. You break. You shrink. You apologize for things you never did. You become smaller just to be worthy of the crumbs they throw your way. That's not love. That's control. And they know exactly what they're doing. They create a cycle of confusion where you're constantly second, guessing yourself. You never feel stable. One day they praise you. The next day they criticize you. One moment they hold you, the next they turn cold. This hot and cold behavior is not a flaw in their character. It's a tactic. It keeps you walking on eggshells, always uncertain, always striving for a version of peace that only they can provide. And only when they feel like it. You begin to think their love is a reward, not a birthright. You begin to tie your worth to their mood. And just like that, they've won. You're no longer standing in a relationship. You're trapped in a system of manipulation. The most dangerous part, they'll make it look like love. They'll say all the right things. When you try to walk away, they'll pour out sweet words that sound like apologies, but are really just hooks. They don't say sorry to change. They say sorry to reset the game. They want you addicted to hope. Hope that they'll return to the charm they once used to capture you. Hope that they can be who they were in the beginning. But that version never existed. It was a mask made to fool your heart and blind your judgment. And if you speak up, if you try to confront the shift, they'll flip the script. They'll say you're too sensitive. They'll say you misunderstood. They'll make you feel crazy for even noticing. And little by little, they train you to silence your voice, to question your instincts, to doubt your own memory. That's not a mistake. That's design. They don't want you thinking clearly. Because clarity leads to freedom, and they need you trapped. They will even use your kindness against you. They know you care, they know you're loyal, they know you don't give up easily. And they twist those virtues into chains. They make you feel obligated to stay, to fix them, to love them through the darkness they created. They'll tell you stories of their pain, their trauma, their past, not to heal, but to guilt you into becoming their savior. And so you stay. You stay, not because you feel good, but because you feel responsible. You stay because you believe leaving them means abandoning someone who's broken. But in reality, they're not broken. They're calculated. They're in control. And you're the one slowly breaking. They don't just lie. They distort reality. They take the truth, stretch it, bend it, twist it until it no longer resembles what really happened. And they do it with such confidence, such calm, that you begin to question your own memory. They rewrite the past not just to protect themselves, but to control how you see yourself. They change the narrative so slowly, so subtly, that you don't even realize it's happening. You remember a conversation one way, but they tell it back to you completely differently. You bring up a moment where they hurt you, and suddenly you're the one apologizing. They act confused. They act offended. They deny things they clearly said. They shift the focus to something you did wrong. And suddenly, you're defending yourself instead of holding them accountable. That's not misunderstanding. That's gaslighting. You start keeping your feelings inside because every time you bring something up, they flip it on you. You walk away from arguments feeling smaller, not stronger. You feel unsure of what's real. And slowly, their version of events becomes the only version that exists. Not because it's true, but because they won't let any other version breathe. They don't just lie to you. They make you lie to yourself. You stop trusting your instincts. You stop listening to your gut. You start thinking maybe you're overreacting. Maybe you're remembering it wrong. Maybe you're too emotional. But you're not. You're being manipulated. They're not trying to find peace. They're trying to win. Every conversation is a battlefield, and their goal isn't truth, it's control. When you express how you feel, they don't listen to understand. They listen to find a weakness, a loophole, a way to flip the blame back on you. And they do it with such calm cruelty that it doesn't look like a fight. It looks like a discussion. But real discussions don't leave you feeling insane. Real conversations don't make you second guess your sanity. When someone rewrites history over and over again, it's not because they forgot. It's because they want you to. They'll even use your own words against you. They'll take something you said in pain, twist it, and throw it back at you when you least expect it. And the worst part, they do it so smoothly that others might not even notice. To the outside world, they seem rational, calm, thoughtful. But behind closed doors, they're reprogramming your reality one word at a time. And they do it with a smile. They want you confused. Confusion is control. If you're unsure about what really happened, then you're less likely to fight back, less likely to walk away, less likely to trust yourself. And that's exactly where they want you, lost in your own mind, relying on their version of the story just to find peace. They'll even contradict themselves and act like you're the one who misunderstood. One day they'll say one thing. The next day, the opposite. And when you call them out, they'll say, "I never said that." Or, "You heard me wrong." Or, "You're putting words in my mouth." And you start wondering, did I really hear that? Was I wrong? You start needing proof of everything, screenshots, recordings, texts, because nothing is solid anymore. They've turned your world into fog. And when you live in fog long enough, you forget what clear skies even look like. You start shrinking. You stop bringing things up. You don't want to argue. You don't want to feel crazy. So you bottle your pain. You bury your questions. You tell yourself it's not worth the fight. And that silence, that's their victory. They don't need you to believe their lies. They just need you to stop believing your truth. That's how they win. They don't need to be right. They just need you to doubt yourself. Over time, you lose your voice. You lose your footing. You start apologizing for things that weren't your fault. You start tiptoeing around their moods. You start replaying every conversation in your head, trying to figure out what you did wrong. But the truth is, you didn't do anything wrong. You're just caught in the web of someone who builds power by breaking your mind. And they won't stop, because every time they rewrite the past and you accept it, even just a little, they tighten their grip. They'll even make you feel guilty for questioning them. They'll act hurt, offended, shocked that you'd even dare to challenge their memory. They'll cry if they have to. They'll talk about how you're always accusing them, how they can never do anything right. And suddenly, You find yourself comforting the person who just lied to your face. You're the one reaching out. You're the one begging for peace. That's not love. That's psychological manipulation, and it's designed to keep you exactly where they want you. Unsure, exhausted, and easier to control. They don't admire your strength, they resent it. They don't celebrate your success, they compete with it. When you shine, they squint. When you rise, they shrink. Because to an evil person, your growth is a threat, not an inspiration. They may smile on the outside, but deep inside, they're calculating how to keep you small. They don't feed your dreams, they feed off your doubt. And the more light you walk in, the more shadow they try to cast over you. They see your potential, but instead of watering it, they poison it. Slowly, quietly, strategically, with backhanded compliments, with subtle jabs, with advice that sounds helpful but is really designed to plant fear. They disguise it as concern. They say things like, "I just don't want you to get your hopes up," or "People like us don't usually make it that far," or "You know it's hard out there, right?" And because you care about them, because you want to believe they mean well, you start internalizing their fear as your own. Evil doesn't always attack from the outside. Sometimes it burrows into your circle. Sometimes it pretends to be your biggest supporter, all while chipping away at your confidence when no one else is looking. They watch you closely, not because they're proud, but because they're tracking your progress, waiting for a moment to bring you back down. The moment you speak life into yourself, they speak doubt. The moment you show courage, they introduce fear. Not loudly, not with direct sabotage, but with subtle words that linger in the back of your mind when you're alone. That's how they feed on your weakness. They don't want to see you fail outright. They want to make you fail, and then offer their shoulder when you do. They want to play both the villain and the hero, so you never see them clearly for who they really are. They'll compliment you in public but criticize you in private. They'll support you just enough to keep you around, but never enough to see you take off. They want you stuck, dependent, doubting yourself. Because if you ever fully believed in your power, you wouldn't need them. And that's their biggest fear, that you'll grow into the version of yourself that no longer tolerates their presence. So they keep you small by feeding the parts of you that are still healing. They find the cracks in your confidence and pour in just enough negativity to make you question your next move. They don't break you all at once. They erode you over time. You'll start to notice it when you share good news. Instead of genuine joy, they change the subject. Instead of celebrating with you, they remind you of the risks. Instead of clapping, they criticize. And when you call it out, they laugh it off. They say, "You're being too sensitive," or "I was just joking," or "I'm just being real with you." But truth without love isn't truth. It's a weapon. And when someone uses your vulnerability as ammunition, that's not honesty. That's harm in disguise. They don't just feed on your weakness. They need your weakness. Because strong people walk away. Strong people see through masks. Strong people break cycles. So they do everything they can to make you doubt your strength. They highlight your mistakes. They ignore your progress. They bring up your past just when you're starting to believe in your future. And they do it with a smile, as if they're doing you a favor. But deep down, they're not trying to help you grow. They're trying to keep you from outgrowing them. You'll feel it in how they react when you set boundaries. When you say no for the first time, their mask slips. When you demand respect, they get offended. When you start to reclaim your worth, they call you selfish. That's how you know they never loved your strength. They only loved your silence. They only stayed close because they could keep you beneath them. And now that you're rising, they don't know how to hold space for you without trying to shrink you again. They'll pretend to support your healing while quietly hoping you'll relapse into doubt. They'll send you quotes about growth and success, but behind your back, they roll their eyes when you talk about your dreams. They love the idea of you changing, as long as it doesn't mean changing your relationship with them. Because deep down, they know that once you truly see your value, you'll stop settling for people who only loved the version of you that didn't know it yet. They don't want you healed. They want you hooked. They don't want you free. They want you familiar. Familiar with shame, familiar with insecurity, familiar with needing their approval just to feel like you're doing something right. They don't empower you, they exhaust you. They drain your energy and call it love. They make you feel guilty for growing and label it as betrayal. But real love never competes with you. Real love celebrates you. Real love makes room for your expansion. It doesn't ask you to dim your light just so someone else can feel comfortable in their shadow. It doesn't get threatened when you rise. It rejoices because that's what real support looks like. But evil doesn't know how to celebrate anyone but itself. They don't want you strong, they want you isolated. They don't want you surrounded by people who love you. They want you cut off from anyone who might remind you of your worth. They start by planting seeds of doubt about the people closest to you. They'll say things like, "I don't think they really care about you." Or, "Did you notice how they were acting around you?" They frame it like concern, like they're protecting you, but what they're really doing is pulling the rug out from under your support system. Because once they separate you from the voices that speak truth, they become the only voice left. And when someone becomes your only voice, they control the volume. They can raise it, lower it, or silence it altogether. And you'll start to believe whatever they say, because there's no one left to tell you different. It begins subtly. They ask why you're still talking to certain friends. They suggest that maybe your family is too controlling. They question people's intentions. And you, wanting to protect your relationship with them, start creating distance between yourself and others. You start canceling plans. You stop opening up. You begin to filter your life through their opinion. And little by little, your world shrinks. What once was full of laughter, connection, and freedom becomes quiet, narrow, controlled. They don't have to raise their voice. They just have to make you feel like everyone else is against you, and they're the only one who truly understands. That's how isolation begins. Not with a slammed door, but with a whisper in your ear that says, you can't trust them. Once they've separated you, they begin to make you dependent. They tell you they're all you need. They make you feel like no one else would love you the way they do. They highlight your flaws constantly so you start to believe that you're lucky someone like them is even choosing to stay. They make you feel like you need their permission to dream, to speak, to be. And because they've already made you question everyone else, you turn to them for everything. For validation, for decisions, for your sense of reality. You begin to measure your worth by their mood. You begin to ask for approval before you make moves. You stop trusting yourself. They'll control what you wear, how you speak, where you go, who you see, but they won't always do it with rules. Sometimes it's with guilt. They'll say things like, "You never have time for me anymore," or, "I guess I'm just not a priority to you." And you, not wanting to hurt them, begin to fold. You start rearranging your life around their insecurities. You give up little things, a dinner with a friend here, a phone call there, until those little things become everything. You tell yourself it's compromise, that all relationships require sacrifice, but deep down, it doesn't feel like compromise. It feels like surrender. They'll watch your every move under the mask of concern. They'll ask where you're going, who you're with, what time you'll be back. Not because they care, but because they want control. They want to know every detail, not to protect you, but to own you. You become more monitored than loved, more policed than protected. And when you push back, when you try to reclaim a little freedom, they turn it on you. They accuse you of being distant, of not caring, of hiding things. And suddenly, the person who isolated you is now accusing you of abandonment. That's the manipulation. They create the wound and then blame you for bleeding. It's in those moments you start to forget who you were before them. You forget what it felt like to be free, to move without fear, to speak without checking their expression first. You forget what your own voice sounds like when it's not echoing their opinion. You start walking through life like a ghost of yourself, afraid to make waves, afraid to be seen too brightly. You keep the peace by losing pieces of yourself, not realizing that peace built on silence is not peace at all. It's prison. Even when others try to reach out, try to warn you, try to help, you find yourself defending the very person who's been hurting you. Because they've built their identity inside your head. You believe their lies because they fed them to you in doses, wrapped in love, sealed with a kiss. You believe they're the only one who cares because they've pushed everyone else away, and stood there in the silence like a savior. You believe they're the answer to your loneliness, not realizing they were the cause of it all along. And sometimes, they'll give you a glimpse of the old charm. Just enough to keep you hanging on. A small gesture, a warm moment, a reminder of how it used to be. And in those moments, you tell yourself maybe it's getting better. Maybe the storm has passed. Maybe things are changing. But they're not. They're just resetting the cycle. Because once they isolate you and make you dependent, they don't have to control you with force. They can control you with hope. When you confront them, when you finally find the courage to bring the pain to the surface, they don't meet you with humility, they meet you with deflection. You tell them how they hurt you, and instead of listening, they get offended. Instead of taking responsibility, they twist the story. Instead of apology, they offer justification. They don't say, "I'm sorry I did that to you." They say, "You made me do it?" They don't show remorse. They show manipulation. They don't sit with the weight of their actions. They toss it onto your shoulders and walk away clean. You end up crying for what they did, and somehow, they make you feel like the one who needs to say sorry. That's how deeply they distort accountability. Evil people are allergic to owning their damage. Not because they don't know what they did. They do. But admitting it means giving up the power they've been clinging to. It means letting go of control, and they'd rather burn the truth to the ground than let you stand on it. So they twist it. They make it seem like you overreacted. Like you're too emotional. Like you misunderstood them, and if you push harder, if you insist on honesty, they'll either explode or retreat. They might yell, curse, insult, or they'll go cold, silent, and act like your pain is an inconvenience. And in both reactions, the message is the same: your feelings are a problem they don't intend to solve. They don't care about healing. They care about being right. And to them, being right doesn't mean telling the truth. It means maintaining the image they've built. It means staying in control of the story, even if it means erasing your reality. They would rather silence you than see themselves clearly. They would rather keep pretending than start repairing. And so, you're left in this cycle where you bring the truth, and they bury it under guilt. You try to clean the wound, and they rip it open again with blame. You walk in with your heart in your hands, and they use it as a mirror to look at their own reflection, asking you, "Why would you make me do this?" They minimize your pain. They downplay what happened. They say, "It wasn't that bad." Or, "You're just being dramatic." Or, "You always bring up the past." And every time they do, they teach you to doubt the importance of your own voice. They teach you that maybe your pain isn't valid, maybe your memories aren't accurate, maybe your standards are too high. And little by little, they chip away at the foundation of your self-worth. They don't say it out loud, but the message is clear. If you didn't get hurt, I wouldn't have to defend myself. And that's the most dangerous game they play, making you responsible for both the injury and the apology. They justify their actions with stories. They talk about their childhood, their trauma, their stress, their past relationships. And yes, everyone has a story, and everyone deserves compassion. But compassion is not a permission slip for abuse. It's not an excuse to hurt people and walk away unbothered. But they use their past like a shield, not as a lesson. They weaponize their history to avoid accountability in the present. And if you're an empath, if your heart leans toward understanding, you'll start making excuses for them too. You'll start saying, "Maybe they didn't mean it." Or, "They're just going through a lot." And that's exactly what they want. They don't want you to hold them accountable. They want you to carry their burden while they keep breaking things. And when the guilt tactics don't work, they switch to comparison. They say, "At least I didn't do that." Or, "You should be grateful I'm not worse." They lower the bar and then ask you to applaud them for stepping over it. They treat basic respect like a favor. They treat decency like charity. And they act like their worst wasn't as bad as it could have been, so you should be thankful. That's not growth. That's manipulation wrapped in a mask of humility, and it keeps you stuck in a place where your standards are always dropping just to maintain the relationship. Even when you offer grace, they use it as leverage. When you forgive them, they don't change. They relax. They take your forgiveness as a sign that you'll tolerate more. They don't rise to meet your hope. They sink deeper into comfort. They don't take your second chance as a reason to be better. They take it as proof that you won't leave. And once they know you're afraid to walk away, they stop pretending. They stop hiding the blame and start throwing it. They stop covering the truth and start rewriting it right in front of you. And you stand there wondering how the person who hurt you became the victim in their own story. And even when they do apologize, it's empty. It's timed. It comes when they fear losing you, not because they understand what they did. It comes with strings attached. "I'm sorry, but..." "I didn't mean to, but..." "I said I was sorry, what more do you want?" The apology is not about your healing, it's about your silence. They want the apology to be a reset button, not a door to change. And the moment you accept it, they expect everything to go back to normal. No growth, no reflection, no transformation. Just a pause in the chaos before it starts again. There's a voice inside of you that's been whispering from the beginning. It doesn't yell. It doesn't demand. It doesn't fight for your attention the way the world does, but it speaks. It speaks in the pit of your stomach when something feels off. It tugs at your chest when a smile doesn't match the eyes. It chills your skin when words sound sweet, but the energy behind them feels wrong. That voice doesn't come from fear, and it doesn't come from ego. It comes from your spirit, and it always knows. It knows when a presence feels dark even if the face looks familiar. It knows when a touch carries weight even if the hand feels soft. It knows when love is real, and when love is just a mask that evil wears to get through your door. But the tragedy is, we live in a world that teaches us to silence that voice. We're told to be polite, to give the benefit of the doubt, to not jump to conclusions. We're taught to trust what we see, not what we feel. And so we ignore the very compass meant to protect us. You've felt it before, that unease when someone enters a room and the air shifts. That ache in your gut when a conversation doesn't feel safe. That flicker of warning when someone tells you exactly what you want to hear but somehow, something about it feels too perfect. That's not paranoia. That's perception. That's your soul recognizing a pattern your mind hasn't fully processed yet. Your spirit picks up on energy, on intention, on what's behind the mask, even before your brain finds the evidence. And if you've ever been betrayed, ever been hurt by someone you trusted, chances are you can look back and say, I knew. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew. Because your spirit was never confused. It was your mind that tried to rationalize what your heart had already sensed. Sometimes that voice will scream in silence. It'll wake you up at night. It'll make you lose your appetite. It'll make your chest tighten every time you're around a certain person. You'll feel drained, not because you did anything wrong, but because your soul is working overtime trying to warn you while your mind is still clinging to a version of the person that never really existed. And the longer you ignore that voice, the louder the pain becomes. You start questioning yourself. You start making excuses for someone else's behavior. You tell yourself, maybe I'm overreacting, or they didn't mean it like that, or it's not that bad. But deep down, your spirit is shaking its head, trying to get you to remember who you are and what you deserve. It's not easy to listen, because sometimes that voice asks you to walk away from people you love. Sometimes it asks you to set boundaries that feel uncomfortable. Sometimes it asks you to trust a truth you can't yet prove. And that's hard. Especially when the person you're dealing with knows how to play the part. Evil isn't always loud. It doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it wears a suit. Sometimes it gives you flowers. Sometimes it cries and tells you it's sorry. But your spirit doesn't get distracted by appearances. It sees the core. It reads the energy. It knows when something is taking from you instead of feeding you. It knows when a connection is slowly killing your peace instead of building your purpose. And the truth is, that voice inside of you has always been your greatest protection. It's the reason you pulled back, even when you couldn't explain why. It's the reason you hesitated before trusting someone, even when they said all the right things. It's the reason you couldn't fully relax around someone, even though nothing seemed obviously wrong. Your spirit was paying attention. It was catching the small shifts in tone, the inconsistencies in action, the shadows behind their charm. It saw what your eyes missed, and it didn't need proof to know the truth. You were born with that voice, that inner knowing, that quiet strength, but life tries to drown it out. Toxic relationships, false teachings, trauma, fear, they all try to convince you that your instincts are wrong, that you're too sensitive, that you're imagining things. But you're not. You were given that voice for a reason. And the more you listen to it, the stronger it becomes. The more you honor it, the more peace you'll find. Because peace isn't just about being surrounded by calm. It's about being connected to truth. And truth lives in that voice. There will be moments when everyone else tells you someone is amazing, kind, generous, but you feel something different. Trust that. Don't wait for the mask to fall. Don't wait for the damage to be done. You don't need a dramatic exit to walk away. You don't need a list of offenses to choose distance. You don't need to justify your discomfort to anyone. If your spirit says something's wrong, something is wrong. Even if you can't explain it, even if no one else sees it, even if it breaks your heart to believe it, you deserve to feel safe. You deserve to feel free. You deserve to be in spaces where your spirit doesn't have to fight just to survive, where your inner voice doesn't have to scream to be heard, where your peace isn't a casualty of someone else's chaos. And the only way to find those spaces is to listen when your soul speaks, even if your heart isn't ready, even if your mind needs time, even if the truth hurts. Because that voice inside of you, that quiet, steady voice, It's not just trying to keep you safe, it's trying to lead you home.